when you put limitations on people's thinking, reading, etc., on access to information, right? Human beings being human beings, we will always find a way. Yeah? Like, okay, you say this, let me find out whether it's true. Okay, I think I have offended a lot of people, so I'm going to just put it out there, right? But I think we need to know how we all live to understand each other.
We're all witnesses to, I think Malaysians are very famous for our keyboard warrior skill. We're able to, like, when we engage on comments on social media, we go all out. I mean, it ranges from ridiculously offensive to, like, we were talking about this earlier, like pure comedy, right? And you literally sit there, read the comments and have a giggle.
I think it comes from a point of frustration, right? Because they're not heard in real life. So on the internet, they're like, okay, I've got this opportunity. Nobody's going to know who I really am. So I'm going to just say all these nasty things. To hell with his or her feelings. I'm just going to say it.
For Dina Zaman, understanding each other starts with curiosity and the imagination to sit inside someone else's story. The author of I Am Muslim, Malayland, and co-founder of research outfit Iman, Dina's own curiosity was shaped early, a childhood split across countries that weren't hers, with roots in Terengganu that she kept coming back to. While Islam matters deeply to her, it's her willingness to sit with difference that lets her see beyond the labels Malaysia so often insists on.
You know, I think it was last year, or was it 2 years ago, right? So I went to see Seni Pusaka's show in that Go Down. I can't remember that place. Anyways, so I met these girls, all pakai tudung with their boyfriends, and they were like, oh kakak, I'm seeing mine turi for the first time, kuda kepang for the first time. And my parents are saying that it's haram. But I said, so how come, if your parents say it's haram, how come you're here?
Yes.
And they said, this is my life.
Right.
And they are willing. I think the young are saying, okay, we've been taught this, but I'm going to make my life on my own terms. I'm going to think on my own terms. And I'm always blown away by the researchers I work with, right? I mean, we all come all sorts of shapes, sizes, and thinking. But every one of them is like, Miss Dina, like this, you know. Oh, really? And I think if I had been that researcher at that age, during that time, I wouldn't have been able to think that way. Because I go, oh, my boss is going to kill me. Oh, no. The state says you have to think this way about identity and religion. These kids now are like,
well, and this is it, right? You bring up an interesting point on the license to think or the freedom to think. Do you need to be allowed to think? And then, and then what my next question is do Malaysians read enough? Do you agree, disagree, and why?
Okay, I'm really biased because I am surrounded by thinkers, researchers, and writers. So my little circle, even my young researchers, right? They've always got a book.
Right. But that's a niche. Is that niche?
It could be niche because I also have met young people who are like, I actually asked them, have you ever read Glam, the magazine? No, it's too much. It's a fashion magazine. How can you say it's, you know, it's too much? So you have this little group who like reads, buy secondhand books or save up money, you know. Then you have the general population who are like, we'll read, but enough. I mean, a lot read the Malays' religious books. Right. And you go, okay, that's good, but you've got to expand your reading. If not, they'll read self-help books. But I don't think we're any different from any other country.
Why do you think reading is so important?
I tell you this, that.
And I'm asking an author.
No, for me, right, when I was growing up, I didn't really have friends, Deborah. It's like one moment, oh, we're going off to another country. So I had,
moving again, losing friends, having to make friends.
So I had books. I had no choice. And, you know, I had no choice. I said, okay, lah. And that actually became my friend, you know, the books. But I also think this. I keep telling everyone that I know sometimes travel is very expensive. But if you read these books, even travel books, you actually get to go to these countries without having to spend
your
money.
imagination.
It expands your mind. You need that. I feel that when you read books, you're imaginative and you're also very curious, and we need these two.
So I was a reader growing up. And then I stopped for a good few years, and then I only started back in my maybe late teens. And that was when I was really into like politics and development work, and I was obsessed with reading biographies.
Yeah.
And I would read about like genocides and war and all these very dark and depressing topics.
Yeah.
So in my reading and understanding, why did a genocide happen, or why did a civil war happen in Cambodia or in China and all these tyrants? You look at a lot of authoritarian regimes. You look at like Mao's China, Nazi Germany, Pol Pot, Cambodia, and they were all educated people, very learned people, often spoke more than one language, were educated abroad, if I'm not wrong. But what they all did was, and intentionally, they all burned and or banned books. So they knew the power of reading, and they wanted to control the narrative.
Yeah.
Fast forward today, 2026, we still see this happening in many countries around the world, where governments are still trying to control the narrative and still trying to decide what is good and what is not good for society.
Right.
But we also live in a very digital world, where it is getting harder and harder to control information. People have access to the internet, all kinds of information, whether it's also right or wrong. And that's led us into the whole different discussion on misinformation. But the question is, why are governments still trying to control the narrative when it comes to information? And clearly there's a power there, right?
Okay. I think, how do I see this? At the most simplest basic level, right? Governments are made out of human beings. And then, we were just talking about, I won't tell you about the situation, right? But people were asking me, why is it so-and-so before he ascended to a certain level in his life, he was quite normal.
Yes.
And now that he's there,
Yes.
it's all about controlling things, about, I need to put out this positive narrative about myself, blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, human beings, right? We are very egotistical. We want power. We want to be seen that we are power. And once you're at that level, it's very difficult to come down. So when you talk about governments, right, you're like, whoa, we are now ruling this country, etc. When you're at the top, it's not easy for you to control the masses. You're like, okay, the only way we can do this is, okay, like elections come and go and all that, is to control how they think. So we put all these cages around that. You can't read this book, you can't think this way. We'll put up all these laws to say, if you say this, you go off to jail. That to me is a form of control, because they want the status quo. And I think that, with our last elections, right, when everyone's going, oh, TikTok has to be banned and all, I think human beings, especially kids, young people who live in a digital era, right? And even adults, like my mom believes everything on WhatsApp. And you're like, no, mommy.
You're like, don't forward that post.
The fact is, when you put limitations on people's thinking, reading, etc., on access to information, right? Human beings being human beings, we will always find a way. Yeah? Like, okay, you say this, let me find out whether it's true. I mean, I have had these discussions with my mom. She'll send me all these things from YouTube and all about religious ethics and all. I said, Mama, this is not a proper ustaz. Why? Well, I don't like this ustaz. He's so blah, 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 blah. So I'll go on to YouTube. And that is a very simple example of how people are saying, we don't trust the so-called confirmed legal information. We want to find the truth that sits with us.
Right.
So you can't stop YouTube, you can't stop WhatsApp, you can't stop TikTok. People will find out things that they want to find out. And I think it's going to be very, very difficult. I'm not saying I agree with total freedom, because about misinformation, horrible things on the internet, the TikTok and all that, right? So that needs to be, that needs to be monitored.
Yes.
Right. And I believe like in TikTok and all these tech companies, they have a team that takes down, right? But having said that, I think it's a human right for us to have access to information.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whether someone agrees with it or not is a different thing. But I always say reading is one of the biggest forms of resistance or rebellion.
Oh yeah, I agree with that,
So your first book, I Am Muslim, you wrote this quite a few years ago, and you say it was a selfish journey of faith. You went out to meet shamans, nationalists, moderates, every kind of character to figure out what your faith, Islam, actually means to many Malaysian Muslims, right? And I think it came from a place, your place of confusion or curiosity as well, trying to figure out what your faith meant to you.
Right.
So what did you discover in writing this book? And also how did people engage with this book? Because it's gonna clearly push people's buttons, right?
So this backstory then. I was doing my master's in England, and I have this grand aunt, right, who was married to a German. So she said, "What are you doing for Christmas?" I don't know. Okay, come on, let's go off to Germany. You're gonna meet your cousin Mark. So I went there, right? Like, I'm always up for an adventure.
Yeah.
I met Mark, and he says, "What are you doing now?" I said, "Oh, at that time it was around December, but it was Ramadan. So I fasted, even though it was very cold." Then he said, "You're fasting?" I said, "Yeah." I was quite stupid, okay, at that time. So I went, "You're not fasting?" "No." And he said, "Are you a practicing Muslim?" And I said, "I'm trying my best." And he says, "I'm not."
Okay.
So I just went, "Ooh, I've never met."
You didn't have that reference point before.
Well, I didn't have a relative who was a free thinker, so I got quite excited. like,
Ooh, this is interesting.
So then we went to the pub. So he got me a carrot to buka puasa. Can you imagine? You buka puasa with a carrot, right? I'm like, oh, this is yummy. But we talked about it. He says, "Dina, I'm German. I'm German first. And that is beyond my faith, beyond everything, because religion is personal." Then I went, okay. And then after that, during Christmas, right up to New Year, I went around Berlin with him. We went to a punk concert. I remember this. I like music, yeah? And I met so many Malaysians whose parents took the boat to go to England, to go to Germany, yeah? And they married Germans, English, etc. And the kids, they were really lovely, but they were like, "We don't speak Malay, we don't speak English, we're Germans first." But I spoke to the parents. And for me, I was like, oh, this is absolutely wonderful. I've never met Malays like this before. Because even though Bah traveled here and there, the Malaysians I met were Malaysians, like all of us in this room, right? But not these, I mean, I have cousins who are like, half Italian, half Thai and all that. But these issues were never brought up. Then when I got back to England, it was term time and all that. So before I get back to the main question was, I took the bus to Sainsbury's. Then I saw all these kids, right, wearing these cone hats and all. And I said, "You ni budak Melayu ke?" And they were like, yeah. We are going off to this tarikat in Manchester. And I went, oh. I said, "Oh, what are you doing? Can I follow?" "No, tak boleh." And they thought I was Chinese.
Oh.
But I spoke to the guy all the way to Sainsbury's, and he told me, okay, because I'm in England, I need to have this faith thing, because, I might just become wild, like all these mat salis. And I went, Deborah, for me, people tell me all the deepest, darkest secrets. And that has helped me. So when I came back, I was with Malaysia Kini then. Every one of the staff had to have a column. So I panicked. I went, oh, shit. Hell was I gonna do? What to write? I have no opinion. I'm just here to be an editor, right?
Yeah.
Then I just told Stephen Gunn, Premise Chandran, okay, I think I have a column. Okay, write it lah.
Yeah.
And actually that's how I Am Muslim came about.
Right.
I had this friend, Timmy, he had this blog called The Pig Cyclist. It was really fun. They said, "Ayo, Timmy, what am I gonna do?" "Nama, you interview me lah." And I'm like, all right. So he had just turned 40 and he said, "You see, Dina, there is a hadith," he said to me then, that once you turn 40, if you don't turn back your life, then that's it. So if you've been like me, a hedonist, etc., womanizing and all, if I don't change my ways, I'll be like this till the day I die, and no, I don't want to go to hell. So that was the first chapter for I Am Muslim. So after that, I thought, oh, this is quite funny. I will just interview people.
Yeah.
And actually, at that time, Deborah, people were so open and very giving, very welcoming. I got this auntie, "You go lah, go and interview." I brought some friends along to the interviews and they were like, "Where do you find all these crazy people?" And I said, I don't see them as crazy. They're Malaysians. They just happen to live like this, And I mean, I went to people who lived in Damansara Heights. I went to people who live in Taman Maluri. I met men who claimed they had chopped off the heads of the Chinese during May 13th. But when I met them, they were all old and holding canes. And like, you sure you did all these things, I'm always surprised. And how was the reaction? this is very interesting. So I wrote this on Malaysia Kini first. So Malaysia Kini, it's basically preaching to the converted. Everyone's like, they thought that way. They had the money. Okay, it's not much to subscribe to Malaysia Kini, but they had that money to support, right? But when the book came out, I said, my God, I never knew Malaysians were this nuts. You know, I had threats, right? How dare you write about this? And I'm like, oh.
So where do you think that comes from? So I feel like identity is a very interesting thing. Can you maybe unpack what does it mean? Why do humans hold on to identity so much? And then, you know, you said earlier,
Right.
your cousin, for him, German, I'm German first, above and all else, right? For us in Malaysia, it interplays between, I think, race, religion, nationality,
Right.
and other. But why
think
do we
it's
hold on
this.
to it so much?
I think for the Malay Muslims in Malaysia, right, that's the saying, jangan buka aib orang. That means do not lift out the person's flaws or faults, right? So if I come in and write all these things that a lot of people
exposes.
are doing, you know, and you're like, how can you expose this, that we Malays actually go to bomos? I mean, they still do, you know, they still do this. I mean, and at that time, they were saying that we cannot let other people know that this is what we Malays are. And I'm going, why aren't you proud of it? I mean, to me, it's this. Yes, it can be a quirky thing. It can be something that people are like, oh my God, you know, but this is human life.
Right.
And I think I tried to capture that with my second book, which was, I mean, it's there, Holy Men, Holy Women. So if you don't mind me just talking a bit about that. After dealing with I Am Muslim, I thought, you know, I'm sure this is not something that we Malay Muslims deal with. I think that non-Muslims also go through all this. So it was fun. I think, to be honest, Holy Men, Holy Women was my favorite book because I went all around Malaysia. I went to Sabah, I went to Sarawak, and I just said, oh, this is so wonderful. And they all had the same things like, you nak tulis pasal apa in Sarawak, right? Kalau you cakap my name, don't use my name. And when it came out, I had people writing. At that time, I was with Malaysian Insider, like, you shouldn't be exposing people. We Christians are like this, because I interviewed the Carmelite nuns. I tell you, they were some of my favorite people. They were so nice. And I spoke through a door because they took this covenant of, we will not
Take a vow of like
Yeah.
not communicating with
Yes,
people.
so I spoke through a door with a hole, and I'm like, what can I see? And one of them said, do you think you could get me Gardena chocolate muffins? So every time I went there, I did. And I wrote about that. And some people were like, you shouldn't have written about them because they're a secret to even the Christian community. And I'm going, wow, this is so... I think the reason why we Malaysians overall, right, we don't like to buka aib, lift the veil of our pride. Maybe it's because we're Asians. We don't talk about things like this, you know. And maybe I think I have offended a lot of people. So I'm going to just put it out there, right? But I think we need to know how we all live to understand each other, you know. I had a friend who said this, especially when my book Malayland came out. Oh, okay, I got to do this, right? He interviewed all those silat people, the Tanjak boys, right? Why don't you just interview Malays like us? So actually us.
Like us. Who's
Like,
us?
Yeah. Malays like us are like who, you know? You know, like you and me, you know, we are English educated. So I just sat there, Deborah, I'm going, wah, macam ni pula you fikir kan? And I said, Malaysia is not made up of Malays like you, or Chinese like you, or Indians like you. And that's why I keep saying, it's a class thing, you know? Because we talked about it earlier, right? We had Chinese friends. They said, do you think you could help us with this Chinese? Oh, no, we don't deal with that, you know, because that's not our world. We've got this lovely life. We don't want to know what's happening because, and on that note, I think I understand why people are like this, especially for the minority Malaysians, right? You've worked so hard to create this utopia. You know, you've worked incredibly hard. You know, you face racism when young, your parents, your grandparents and all. So once you've got that country club, the private schools, a fantastic life, it's like, I've made this, don't enter it. I don't want to know. And it's very convenient. And it's also, you know, one less problem. Because at the end of the day, I will try my best to build this wealth for one or two generations. Or at least the kids go abroad and never come back.
Yes.
And even for the Malays, especially Malays of a certain class, right? We don't want to, it inconveniences us to know all this. Tak payahlah, right? About these poor Malays, they're still going to be poor, they're still stupid. And you go, wow, people are openly prejudiced.
So I think the point is it's not between races, but really we say this within our own races, we say this about each other, and it really goes down to your socioeconomic class.
Oh yeah.
The have-nots, as it were.
I had this, okay, and it came from a friend who I would say is a non-Malay Malaysian. And when that person said, I went, alamak, people actually can say this. And I wanted to ask, but aren't you one? But I was so stumped. I said, oh, don't deal with those people, they're estate Indians. And I just stared at that and I went, wow.
We actually talk like that about
Yeah,
each
we
other.
actually talk like this. So of course this goes into my diary. And you go, how would I feel if I am that person as someone who is supposed to advance my community?
Right.
Calls me an estate Indian. I think that's really wrong. Yeah. But you know, this is Malaysia, and we talked about this.
Yes.
Why is racism? Why is all this so mainstreamed? Yeah.
But I really feel, you know, I grew up with that, like there's certain things you just don't talk about, it's just shunned upon, things are taboo or things are sensitive. And so you lose, the average Malaysian loses the skill set of how to, not only, because when something is not spoken about and you speak about it behind closed doors or with like-minded people, you don't develop the skills to really appreciate, understand, accept, and to entertain uncomfortable and unpleasant moments, right? So you know, tell me if you agree with this, but I get the sense of we grew up in an environment where it's don't question your elders, don't challenge the teacher, don't go against the mainstream. But if you look at, you look at countries or societies that innovate, that invent, that build new industries, have new ideas, the one thing they have in common is they're all encouraged to ask why.
Yes.
Or they're not afraid to ask why.
Yeah.
And why is this? It's a central principle in creating anything. If you didn't ask why, there wouldn't be electricity, there wouldn't be the internet, there wouldn't be AI. So how do we as a country, on one hand, we're looking to the future, we want to be a leader in Southeast Asia, in tech, in data centers, and all of this, in startups. But on the other hand, a lot of our systems, our education system, the general narrative is like, shut up, sit down, listen.
Yeah.
Don't challenge.
I think education is really, really important in Malaysia. I know a lot of people who say that the Malaysian education system is sinking. But I think, and again, I will say this, I'm very biased towards my researcher friends, the younger ones, right? I think partly because their parents are telling them, read books. Even if expensive, we'll find a way to get you a book, secondhand book, right? And this generation, because they move around, the Rubies, the Who Does the people, the Lian Hongs who run around in my life, right? Because there's that generation of, well, you know what? I kind of want to figure out what this means. So there's a YouTube, there's a lot of things that they have access. They don't need to pay money anymore. You can, download PDFs, right? And they have friends who make them question, is being Chinese, the way I am, very different from the way my parents are? Which is what Iman research is actually saying. Like, Violet wrote this fantastic brief. We're actually very different from our parents and grandparents. Yes. We think this way. So I feel that the younger set is actually breaking all the rules, and I'm glad. So I'm on Threads and TikTok, right? Okay, I look at a lot of nonsense. But I just saw this and I just thought, wow, you guys, it started with this. The Malays going out to rescue dogs. Whether they wear gloves or not, they're fighting back. Like, we will rescue dogs, and there's a lot of people clapping hands.
Yes.
Now, this is another new trend that I went, wow, you girls are very brave, yeah? Because at my time, I keep reminding everyone, I'm an auntie, it would be quiet. So these are girls, tudung girls, right? Why I like Indian boys? Why my boyfriend's Chinese? And they put up and you go, and everyone's like, wow, so handsome, so this, so that. And of course the Malay boys are like, you are, but the girls are saying, no. We don't want you. We want our Chinese boys, Indian boys. And I'm seeing this on Threads. And they're putting their faces there. I tell you, these Malay girls in hijab, right, when they kutuk people,
watch out.
Well, there was one, I've learned this thing. Muka dia macam muka baldi. You know, you look like the face of a pail. And I said, oh, I like this insult. I want to adopt this.
What is the face of a pail? Nothing.
Nothing, you know. But they actually do this. And I said, this is such a shift. You see even young boys now talking about mental health, body dysmorphia, right? And let's not talk about toxic masculinity because that's a different thing altogether. But the fact is, even young men in Malaysia are saying that how we've been brought up is actually not good for us. We're having a lot of confidence issues. And they're talking about this. Malaysia is really a young country, and the young is going to push it. Yeah.
So talking about social media,
Right.
we're all witnesses to, I think Malaysians are very famous for our keyboard warrior skill.
Yeah.
We're able to, like, when we engage on comments on social media, we go all out.
Yeah.
I mean, it ranges from ridiculously offensive to, like, we were talking about this earlier, like pure comedy, right?
Right, yeah.
And you literally sit there, read the comments and have a giggle. But I personally believe that Malaysians, the average Malaysian does not know how to debate or argue intelligently.
Yes.
And instead we descend into personal attacks.
Right.
And we've seen this in Parliament, we've
Right.
seen this, you know, at across the corridors of power, right? So you recently had a bit of a controversy on social media, then you basically said, and I want to ask you about this. What is the difference between attacking someone, making it very personal when you don't agree with someone's opinion, and actually engaging to articulate, to use your words, articulate your argument well? So teach us, how does someone know when they're being emotional and descending into personal attack versus, I don't agree with Dina, but I'm going to engage and argue based on fact, based on knowledge, and be respectful.
Yeah. I think, you know, with the advent of the internet, okay, so I was there during Malaysia Kini, yeah? That was the first time we met keyboard warriors. And I remember Stephen and Prem going, Hayo,
where do you begin?
Where do you begin, right?
Yeah.
So that was me, and I think there was Padma, the other sub-editor across me. And we were like, Padma, what do we do? And we're like, delete, you know? I think because it's so new then, right? And even now, you see, okay, I don't know how it's like in government schools now, right? I think that if you go to like really good government schools, you know, like all these MCKKs and all, you are taught to articulate your ideas, okay? Because it's one of the stellar government schools.
I mean, you have Malaysians winning international debate competitions. Yet the average Malaysian seems to struggle with this.
I think it's because of this. One, okay, and I sound like a fuddy-duddy, but my time, Deborah, I went to Convent Nanas for a bit. Literature, whether it was in Bahasa Malaysia or English, were compulsory. Science stream or not, you had to do. So I remember we had to memorize Shakespeare, right? We had to act out Hamlet in our school uniforms and all. And we had teachers who would say, why did you say that? Why did you? So we were able to do that. But now everyone's focusing on business, on the sciences, on math, and literature, and even history, right? They've been relegated to the back. So people don't know how to argue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got panned by the readers of the Rakyat Post. So initially I wanted to go to war.
Yes.
Then I said, you know what? I can't do this, you know. So I thought, let me go through everything.
Yes.
And I got Claude AI to go through. Fantastic in this AI thing. And I started looking at the pain points of everyone who took pot shots at me. Okay, one, they're very short, you know, and they're not exactly well informed. You know, it was just basically bantai lah, right? I think it comes from a point of frustration, right? Because they're not heard in real life. So on the internet, they're like, okay, I've got this opportunity. Nobody's going to know who I really am. So I'm going to just say all these nasty things. To hell with his or her feelings. I'm just going to say it. Ultimately, it is about the anger of not being acknowledged in this country. That, and as I said earlier, right? If you are from a certain class, you go to certain school, you go to St. John's or BBGS and all that, yeah, you know each other and all. And in school reunions, you meet up, okay? But at the end of the day, if you don't have the same kind of jobs or same income bracket, right? Some of the people who don't have as much as you will fall off the tracks, right? So that resentment is there. I've always felt that, yes, on internet, everyone, multiculturalism, Malaysia, truly Asia, I do feel it's manufactured. You know, it's like, I think we're perfect. We live, we coexist with each other, but it could be improved. Yeah. And looking at all those comments, I said, okay lah, I'm just a convenient target. I've always been a convenient target. Okay lah, you just live with it. But when you look at that, you say, actually they're angry because nobody has ever listened to them.
And there are no avenues
There are no
in
avenues.
daily life.
Or, look, I've met some of these readers who took pot shots at me. It was quite funny, you know. Met a few of them. And you know what was so shocking? Okay, that was one, right? Wow, I appeared in a right-wing thing, you know. So I said, okay, let's meet. The guy was shocked. You want to meet me? Yeah. So I met him, an old uncle. And what was worse was, he was my dad's staff. He said, I didn't know that your father was my boss. So we've actually become friendly. And then you realize, you know, as I got to know him, I said, Cik, kenapa you tulis? Aduh, pening ah. He said, okay, he lives in his own little bubble. And he said, you have to believe this, Dina. Because if you don't this, Malaysia, yeah, is actually going to fall down to all these intruders, colonizers, and like, this is 2026. And when you look at your readers or whoever who took pot shots, you know, sometimes you go, you can't get angry with them.
Yeah.
I don't want to be patronizing, but sometimes you actually kesian and go, alamak, you're like this. I think that for anyone in the public eye, working the kind of work that you do, that I do, right? That we have to be tough and firm because the work we do is very, you know, it's stressful, right? We need to have compassion, not just for ourselves, but for all the people.
So I've always held the belief that our country, it's a young country, but we need to move away from race-based politics to policy-based discussions, right? And it was interesting that your studies showed that young Malaysians, and I believe across all races, actually agreed with this. They want race-based policies to be dismantled, and many of them feel politics has just become messy. They seem disillusioned by it all, and then a lot of them are choosing to just stay away. It's messy, it's a shit show. I know I'm being used. I know there's an agenda, and I want out. At the same time, young Malaysians are thinking about their future. They want financial security. They want to be able to thrive. They want a multicultural country. Are our leaders not listening to this data? And why are we still seeing the leadership machine or the political machine is still one narrative, yet you're saying that all the data is saying the young Malaysians actually want something very, very different? There seems to be a very big gap.
I think this, so I'm finishing up a paper, right, which is driving me crazy. But one of the things I wrote about was this, that we had a government change in 2018, okay? So the opposition became the government, all right? So great, we all voted for that. But I think that, you know, when you're an activist, you're an activist. But when you become a minister or part of governance, right, it's a different world altogether. I do sometimes think, my God, I think they're totally overwhelmed by this.
Yeah.
Have any of them actually read policies, roadmaps, etc., because the previous government did that, all this 10, 20 years roadmaps, this is what's going to happen, etc. And I think that, let's talk about this recent government. They're new, 3-4 years, yeah? They've entered. A lot of them have not been in the government as civil servants at all. They're grappling, I feel, you know, like, okay, we know what's going on because I also turun padang and all that, yeah? But the thing is that when you're at the top and now you are seeing all these layers, civil servants and all, right? And then you go right down to the ground, you're not able to see, or all these layers are actually not blurring you, not hindering you, but you're unable to do what you're supposed to do because there's so many things that you have to do. Once you become a minister, your life is different.
Right.
You know, it's not just about policies. You've got to meet, you know, dignitaries from other countries. It's a different life altogether. So you have the government ministries, like the Kementerian Wanita, MITI, for example, who do that layering of work and all. I sometimes, when I observe, and I don't say this on behalf of Iman, when I look at this and I go, someone's not talking to each other because it's not trickling down to the bottom. How do we do this? I do talk to my dad about this, Bahwa, during your time, how is it like, right? And he said, okay, of course we had a prime minister, we had this, but the civil servants were the cogs in the machine. We tell you, we go down, we work with economists, etc. We work with universities, and we go to the minister and say, this is what you have to do. And if you don't do this is what's going to happen. I don't know whether this is happening now.
So are you saying that no one is speaking to the youth? The youth are not...
I think that when people are speaking to the youth, right, it's always a select youth. Look, if you look at the Malay youth, right, and we published this in the Star, do you know, we got panned for going to gigs, punk concerts and all. I said, no, all of you have to go to all these places because that's where the kids scream out their frustration. They do all this, you go. So it was quite funny, right? I was the only one dancing around. So, oh, hi, saya Kak Dina, da. And the kids are like, alamak, we've never met punks in our skinheads an entire life. What more Malay, You need to go down there and get to know them. Don't use them as vote banks. Get to know them and say, come on, man, what's going on with your life? Kenapa?
So what do Malaysian youth want?
I think Malaysian youth wants that what they want is agency. They want, look, like in Kedah, Perlis, when the team went there, and while it was predominantly Malay, there were also non-Malays, right? We know we're being used as vote banks. Tiap-tiap kali ada state elections or whatever, ayo datanglah. Okay, you pacak this bendera, you get some money. Okay, but when you leave us, this is what we have. And Asif, our research director, he went there with a wife. And when he found out that his spouse is a psychologist, they actually asked her, can you teach us how to do mental health? Buat sikit-sikit, but teach us how, so that our friends don't get depression. They want that. And we're going, okay, is anyone funding you? Tak ada, but maybe we can do like in our house. So you see this kid saying, I want to do this. Just teach us, empower us. Tell us who we can talk to if we want to make our friends feel better. Simple things like this. Now, a lot of people are saying, class is going to rule us. The right wing are going to rule us. Now, that's one thing why they possibly may come into power or may have more presence in power. They know how to talk to people on the ground. They don't look down. You say, you got a problem, all right. Let's figure this out, Yes, I'm an apologist for Terengganu. You're like, oh yeah, you're from Terengganu, you're from Pahang. But if you look at Kampung Cina, Terengganu, right? There are places for non-Malays to drink. You can wear your shorts, you can wear your halter neck. Maybe the Terengganu Muslims don't really wear that because, all of us are, and it's hot. You can't exactly wear shorts and a singlet. You'll get sunburned, right? And granted, some of the spaces are being limited more and more now. But ultimately, it's all right to live there. I mean, this is something which we always argue in office. It's just like the minority Malaysians, like say, appeasing the majority. Tak apalah, we're all Cina, India so sikit, so we just listen to them lah. Or is it because they're actually okay with this? And that's something we're still discussing. Yeah. So why are there few non-Malay youths there? It's not because of past. Even Malay youths, there's so few in Terengganu in the East Coast, in Kelantan, because there are no jobs. There's a lot of pop-up cafes there.
So economic realities matter.
Oh, of course.
Young Malaysians want to know that they can earn a decent income, they can have a decent job, they can build a life, they can travel, they can enjoy life.
Yeah, why not?
And who's going to offer that to me?
Who's going to offer that? How do I make a business? Recently, I was talking to this one young girl, single mom from Kedah. And, I went back, I spent the whole night thinking, right? So I'm in Grab, she's from Kedah, she came here because she said, I don't have money in Kedah, there are no jobs. So I'm doing Grab. So being the makcik that I am, so I said, look, why don't you try to recite this doa? Because that's what Muslims do, right? You baca doa. And she said, how am I going to pray, no baca doa? I don't have time. I've got to work 3 jobs. I'm a single mom. And I went back and I thought to myself,
That's an aha moment for you.
it was an aha moment for me. And, I asked myself, there's this thing like, how people talk, this new age thing, surrender to the universe, right? And then for the Malays, Muslims, you surrender to Allah. But when you are in that predicament, when you are like, I don't know how to feed my baby, I have this car, but I got to pay the loans, I live in rented rooms, do you have the energy to surrender to God? I spent the whole night, I'm going, oh, I was such a plonker for saying that, oh, baca this doa, who the hell am I to say that? I also feel this, before we go this, right? Many, many years ago, I volunteered for Dr. Hartini Zainuddin. So I would just tag along, and all that. And we dealt with some people who were MPs. And that person said, the reason why there are so many poor people in Chowkit area who were, on substances, selling themselves, you name it, right, was because they didn't have enough religion. And I'm going, how can you actually say that? These people are poor. I'm sure they pray. I mean, I don't know, right?
I mean, they have it's a complex reality for them.
It's a
right?
complex
so many
reality.
challenges and
Yes.
issues.
So what do you do? Now, are you going to help them? Are you going to help them with jobs? Are you going to give them free clinics? In the end, it was nothing. It was like more like, well,
Judgment and
okay, we've done it. Ambil gambar, click. We did this. And I mean, shortly after that, I moved on because I was building up Iman with my friends. And I just said, it's very disheartening when you see people do that. And I would think that, why, people say that Malaysia is so caring. We're very caring towards people abroad. But here, we can be very cruel to our own people and even the refugees living in Malaysia. And you go, whew. It seems like we disassociate ourselves, like, okay, we find all these things abroad, it's easier. But back home, not so.
been in this space for decades, writing books,
Yeah.
producing so many different research papers, and providing data and hopefully solutions on what changes need to happen, right? And at the end of the day, policy, you speak to policymakers, you speak to decision makers, and companies and individuals that can actually make a difference, right? So at this stage in your life, like, I appreciate it's hard work. It can be exhausting mentally. You can end up in a situation of hopelessness sometimes, perhaps feeling we're doing all of this, we want to see change is not happening fast enough. And at this stage in your life now, what is, I'm sure you speak to powers that be, what are the like, I don't know, top 3 things you're asking them to do? If you can make 3 changes in this country that you think will have the biggest impact on the next generation,
I think
in a meaningful way, what are
I
they?
can't speak on behalf of other research outfits, right? I just don't want us, when we present to you, that it falls on empty ears and, oh my God, we just met Iman, they said this, and nothing happens. You got to do something. But whether they do is another thing, lah. Yeah. What's the thing? Yeah, I always tell my readers this, right? I think you should have that adventure around Malaysia and just go free flow and figure out what life really is. Because I think that's the best way of understanding a country. Rehman Rashid did that, right? I don't know whether I did a Rehman Rashid, but I thought, I like adventure, I think we need that. I really hope anthropology, sociology, actually will be picked up by a lot of students now. I see a lot doing business. I understand there's money in there, right? But I hope a lot more people actually do this. What's the other one?
Policy?
Huh?
Policy-wise?
We write so many policies. Do we act on them? I think we had great policies before. You actually see this being implemented, imperfectly or perfectly, but you see. But Jabra, we all survived through the COVID pandemic, right? We had how many prime ministers? 4 or 5?
Lost track.
You were like, which is actually going to come true. I just hope that things improve. I know I sound like this older, jaded person, but when I see the young saying, as we discussed, I don't care about funding, I'm going to just do it. I don't care. I'll do this, I'll do that. I want that spirit to be there. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dina, for chatting with me. We could go on for hours.
Oh, yes.
But I would say to people listening to read your book, I Am Muslim, Malay Land.
Yes, peeps.
I need to
publishers.
I need to read the Holy Men, Holy Women.
You can only find that in Kerap Budaya, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think absolutely, knowledge is power. Seeking knowledge is a form of resistance, rebellion to access it, to protect it. And if anything, it's like learn how to ask, learn how to challenge, learn how to ask why, and be respectful while doing it, guys.
Yeah. I think the last thing is this, Sometimes I tell my researchers this, you guys, just have fun. I think that if you're too serious, it's actually not good for your heart.
That's true.
Of course. There's a lot of things you go, how can you do things like this? But you have to have fun. You have to laugh. These two things will actually carry you far. Don't take, you have to take things seriously, but don't make yourself ill. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.